All right, so today we have a couple niners, orange and blue. This rider wants a blue niner, not an orange niner. So we're gonna take all the parts from this bike and put them onto this frame. We'll call this a frame swap. Follow along with us. Not too much prepping needs to get done, but what I really want to do is focus on these brakes. I'm going to face these brake mounts just to be sure that they're just perfect, so that the brakes line up easily and set up easily and last a very, very long time. It'll cut down on any noises that are made. So you can see here, it's very shiny around this inside. It's where it's been cutting. It hasn't cut this outer section. We gotta cut until it's least shiny around either the innermost circle or the outermost. So we got a little bit longer to go. So you can see it's smooth all the way around the innermost part. There's just a small low spot around the outside. This caliper is gonna be fine. So what we're gonna wanna do is put this bit back in, kind of right back where we were. This lower clamp goes upwards, setting the height that the other side will cut to. That one didn't take very long. We're already there. We're already bottomed out. We're good to go. No more facing needed. We're gonna be putting the bottom bracket in eventually. I'm gonna prep this frame. Put a little adhesive primer in here, just to make it active, an active surface. Carbon and most resins are neutral and non-reactive. So when you have a compound like a retaining compound or otherwise, you need the primer to activate it. Primer has little flakes of active metal in it. So on this bike, prepping the headset surface, I'm going to be using a little bit of ASC. This is a very long-lasting barrier style kind of a grease. So to create a barrier, not a ton of lubrication, but since this joint's not a dynamic joint, it's a static joint, this is a perfect application for this. This frame is clamped in here, gently, being very careful to loosen the clamp before I try to move the bike. Let's start pulling this thing apart. Loosen in that compression slot for the head stem there. Top cap bolt. So that's the preload on the headset. This is not a predetermined fit, so we're not going to pay attention too much to how the fit was on this older bike. Just remembered we gotta get one more thing cut. We're gonna be putting on a new cable, so that one doesn't matter. One whole grouping of stuff. We'll set this down somewhere safe, temporarily. Being careful not to kink any cables or housings or hoses. This is kind of wrapped up and around. Man, dibs on it. You know, earlier we prepped that other bike. This one is brand new, ridden, I think 1 or 2 times outdoors. It's already corroding. There's already oxidization happening on this. And you can see in the frame itself, what's going on. Bearings are still good, but it's just corroding a little bit around the outside. That can happen because two dissimilar materials can have a reaction with each other. Let's see if the bottom one's doing it too. The bottom one got grease. You can see it was greased. No corrosion. Derailleur's off. All right, so we've got this bike pretty much down to the seat post, and crank. So really just, the crank's gonna come out, we're gonna take the bottom bracket out, and then we'll take the seat post out. Put it on that bike, get that bike ready to go together. This Dub NX crankset has a very high torque, so it's gonna be tight. I'm gonna go find their point with the most leverage. I'm not gonna get it there. The Dub makes about 2 clicks before it's set up. Winning! We're almost done with this orange bike. About to be moving to the blue one. Cleaning up this surface. This inner one particularly, just gonna be prepping this to go in. The bike is carbon. These are aluminum anodized cups. Aluminum is not very reactive. It does depend on the blend, but overall, aluminum is not very reactive, so you need primer on there as well. Just for your information, the Steel is a more reactive material than aluminum or carbon. Little goop. Oh boy, that's fun. No lube on the seat post. There we go. Little PPL. Spike is carbon. This is carbon safe. I like putting most of the grease for the seat post in the seat tube itself. Because then when you push the seat post in, it's still fairly clean around the top. But the seat post is typically going to go in a ways, so you're going to want to make sure to get in there. Some people are pretty particular about a scratched seat post. So typically when I'm doing something like this, I'll put the seat post at maximum height or minimum insertion. Just so that once we figure out the saddle height that we desire, we can go there and then we don't have to go back up with it and cause any scratches. All right, we're gonna be using the BBP 1.2 with the dub drifts, which are part number 2292, to press in this Press Fit 30 dub bottom bracket. Here we go. Just matching up the names, the professional touch. It does not affect the function of the bottom bracket at all. Before we install this crank, I'm just going to clean it up a little bit, just because this has previously been used, so there's a little bit of grease on it from the original build. This has already been adjusted to the other frame, so I'm going to loosen this adjustment back off just in case it bottoms out on us. We want that adjustability. So it just takes about a half a turn, clockwise outwards, clockwise from here, counterclockwise from here. Just leave it like that. Put a little touch of grease on here. PF30 SRAM mountain. You need a spacer on the drive side. If you're doing this, it's a good thing, and you have things already apart, it's a good thing to check to make sure things are tight. So I'm not going to put a torque wrench on these, but I'm going to check where we're at. We're tight. All right. Going to tighten this. There's not a lot of grease on those threads. I'm just going to put a little bit of grease in here. There's a bit of grease on the other one, but it's not going to get on the threads. This grease will get on the threads. The torque value on this crank is extremely high, 54 Newton meters. It's one of the highest torques around for a crank. So if you're gonna be installing one of these, you're gonna want a torque wrench. It's tighter than you might think. So I can tighten this with a fairly long, 8mm P handle. Feels like I bottomed out, just like that. Let's see, that's 55, back it off 1. That's backed off 1, so we're at 54. 8mm hex on there. Not much more of a turn, but we got a decent amount more, and there was a lot of resistance. That was even after it felt like that had bottomed out, it sucked it in just a little bit further. Now we're gonna back off our torque wrenches. You don't wanna start your torque wrenches loaded up. There's a spring in here, and just like any other spring, the more it's compressed or sprung out, the more it's going to get some more memory of that, so it's not gonna have as much tension. So you're gonna have too low of a torque reading in the future. There's a little adjusting nut here. And I'm gonna turn that, from my perspective, clockwise until I feel resistance. I'll back it off again, go back down, just until I feel that resistance. Then watch this. I'm gonna just tighten this little nut, just this little screw, until that little gap right there closes. No more gap. Don't go too far, you can strip the screw. Now we're getting into kind of some interesting stuff. We're gonna kind of get things prepped. We've got yellow tape here. This is awesome when a frame shows up like this and you've got this nylon tubing. You can run cables through it. It's nice and easy. I'm actually gonna put the IR 1.2, the threaded end, into this and pull it out the other end so that it feeds that through, and then I can pull the piece of housing directly through after it. You'll see the yellow over here matches up with yellow over here, so we know that when I pull this out, it's gonna be pulling this yellow piece out. I'm just gonna show you. I've got the tapered thread version wire from the IR 1.2. And this nylon sleeve is often found in shift housing. This is typically called a liner, and you'd find it in shift housing. Just for optimal reduced resistance in there. Don't want to catch it on anything, causing any issues. Take this, throw it out, throw it down the hatch. Boom, magic. Housing. This is gonna go back through. This should be the optimal length that we need. I'm gonna try and judge each end and see which one went where, based on either where the wear marks are. What's the end look like? See that gradual curve? This went up to the front, curved over to the shift lever. This went to the back, slight curve there, came out of the hole here, curved back to the derailleur. So through our forensics, we need this to be up there. So let's send it that way. But first, you can see extra strands of cable coming out the end. You can see both the liner and the casing are further down than that. And we don't want that. So I'm gonna cut those and then file them nice and flat. So they're cut, but they're mushroomed. A little squeeze, problem solved. The insides, you can see that sleeve is just a little bit crushed. You can put a pick, open that up. and we're in business. We can pull on this. We want to make sure we can put a decent amount of pressure on this so we can pull it all the way through. I'm going to step over here and I'm just going to start pulling this through the frame. And when you do this, I try to both push and pull. So you can feel all resistance and you can kind of feel everything that's going on. You have an idea of how much housing is through the bike, how much is still in it. All right, so that's right around where we're gonna end up. Might be one way or the other. We can take our IR 1.2 wire out. All right, so we routed that cable. Should we route these ones too? Nope, not those ones. We got a rag. We got a lower headset bearing. Gotta clean it up. We already put grease inside the frame. So we don't need any more grease in there. We just need to put this bearing in there and clean the other kind of grease off of it that we had on it. Make sure there's no grit or nastiness on it. Make sure it's looking all good. Everything's there. All the seals are intact. Yeah, we're winning. So its new home is in this bike. Right there. That grease will act as a kind of a glue to keep it stuck in there. Upper one, same thing. This is the one you remember was a little bit rusty. A little bit of oxidization in its life. A little bit there, still. With this ASC, it's going to be perfectly fine to put this slightly corroded bearing right back in the bike. It's going to be perfectly fine. The top, that's perfectly fine as well. Seals are in place. We're good to go. Often I see headsets without the compression top. And it is a crucial part of a headset. You're gonna be knocking all over, your headset's gonna be way too tight, everything's gonna be wrong without it. So if you ever have your headset apart and you put it back together and you feel some knocking or you feel something weird, don't freak out. Probably either put this in the wrong position or it's still laying on the bench. This one, we're gonna put a little ASC on it. A little bit will go a long ways on this stuff. That on. Yep. If you were to put the slot anywhere, I like to put the slot back. Doesn't necessarily matter. I would say front or back, not side to side. And you can see this, there's a little tiny spacer in here. I'm gonna leave that in there. This is an optional piece of equipment based upon how far down the frame is from your bearing. And this needed a little bit more clearance, so this looks to be about a 0.05 mil thickness shim to shim it up. You know, we talked about the labels on the bottom bracket over here. We also have labels on the top bearing cover of your headset. I like to put them, you know, you can either choose this or this. You know, in this one, nobody's really gonna be looking at the front, but if they do, they can read this, but people to the side can read Niner. Just a little bit of ASC on there. So I don't know if you guys caught that, but if you look over here, so there's this little piece and you can slide it back and forth. That needs to sit and find its home against this tab on the hanger. And another thing is, this hanger feels all loosey-goosey, you know, just like that. That's not necessarily wrong. If your bike is like that, I would maybe investigate. This one's supposed to be like that because when you tighten this, it's gonna self-align everything and it's gonna help line everything up. So once this all goes back together, this will be nice and firm, there'll be no rattling, everything will be good to go. All right, we're over here, we're gonna grab our brakes, shifter, handlebars, stem, grips, fork, front brake, through axle, crown race. First thing I'm gonna do, wipe this old grease off of this crown race. At this point, I think I will use some PPL. You could use ASC, but in this case, I'm gonna use the PPL. You wanna be generous with your grease, but you don't wanna go crazy. The only reason you don't wanna go crazy is it'll collect dirt and dust and grime, but otherwise you're safe. Through that top cover. Pure aesthetic point of view. This top one, there's only one of these spacers has a 9. I'm putting that 9 on the very top, because I like it like that. Top cap, which you can mount your favorite root beer cap to, this cap. Now it's on. All right, so the rear brake, I don't know if you guys remember us taking that off, but this is where we're gonna go from here. Gonna go to rear brake. This bike, it crosses over, down, then up. 2 bolts to hold this brake caliper in. Notice they had some kind of white Loctite on these bolts to begin with. I'm not gonna trust that that stuff's gonna reactivate. I'm gonna put a little bit of this stuff on there. This is, TLR1, some thread locker that is easily broken, but it holds nice and true. So that's nice and loose. Have some zip ties. I'm just gonna zip tie it right now. Sometimes all the owner cares about is what color it is. For those of you who say the color of your bike doesn't matter, you're lying to yourselves and everybody else. ZP5s, super flush cuts. Awesome tool. I'll throw this chain on. Perfect. Brakes should already be adjusted on this front wheel. That quick release had sufficient grease on it, so that is a good thing. We don't need to put more grease on. Tighten that up, clamp that down, push this down. We'll keep everything nice and aligned. Now, the rear, we do need grease. We do need grease here. A little bit of PPL on here. While we're back here, we can undo the chain from the cassette. It's a good time to listen for brake noise. Holy smokes, listen to this. You hear that? That's what I thought. There ain't no noise. It's perfect. One and done. That never happens. Oh, so this is fun. So check it out. When I tighten this, watch that brake caliper. See it move? Put it back. Just wants to move again. So what I'll have to do is hold it in place as I tighten it down. And we're still good. Brakes are set. We got chain action set. We're not dealing with much grease. Sweaty hands, done. This is a shifter cable. This is what the end looks like. That's what that is. There's a different style for brakes. There's also a different style for campy. So I just want you to know, that's for a shifter cable. This particular shifter has a little rubber piece here. Gonna move that out of the way, and whoop, look at that. A shift cable, strangely, with the same end, came out of here. Gonna take this. I like to try and look for where it's gonna be going. It's going a little bit of a downward angle. And yeah, Bob is your uncle, I think they say. This is kind of a fun one. This is something different that's happened in the last few years. So you see this big guide here. It is a guide, and you should let it allow it to guide the cable. There's a little tab, there's a little hole that needs to come out right here. It comes out. Then you go up and over this little tab here. And over here, don't push on the derailleur like that. Over here, this little washer has a little groove in it. Feeling groovy is what I believe we talk, or Calvin talks about that groove in a video called Feeling Groovy. So that's good right there. Cut this down to about 1 inch. And we're getting there. We are getting there. Hey man, we're doing pretty good. Put that on. I think we got this cable just a touch tight. All right. All right, so that concludes this frame swap. There's a couple more things I'm gonna check over, but I'm not gonna put you through it. Recent video, we checked sealant levels. I'm gonna check the sealant level on this one. We showed you how to do that with just a small zip tie. So I'm gonna check the sealant level, set the tires to the correct pressure, roundabout, meet with the owner of this bike, talk about fit, get them set up, get them out on the trail. Thanks for joining us. Have a wonderful day.